15 adult men pulled a snake in a steel basket for 2 hours. 7.67 meters, longer than your living room's diagonal, but throughout the process, no one dared stand. In front of his head, they all moved to the sides to operate. The measuring officer later wrote in his report, "This snake's muscle density is higher than any python I've ever measured." But after the measurement, no one cared about that record. All were relieved about one thing: he didn't move. Not once in 2 hours. One assistant later said, "I don't know if he was cooperating with us, or waiting for us to make a mistake." That was 15 years ago. At that time, 15 men could lift him. 4 years later, it took 30 people. He was still growing, but since then, no one has ever measured his length again. His name is Medusa, a reticulated python, the most common giant python species in Southeast Asia. Guinness World Record. Certified as the longest snake in human captivity. The man who cares for him is Larry Edgar, who has raised snakes for 30 years. And handled over 200 pythons. In 2004, when Medusa hatched from the egg, Larry took one look and thought he was just an ordinary baby snake. A year later, he realized something was wrong. Medusa's growth rate was twice that of the same species. At age 2, 3 meters. At 4, 5 meters. At 6, 6 meters, like pouring water into a balloon, unstoppable. Larry wrote a line in his blog: "Every time he sheds his skin, the number of people needed to move him increases by 1 round, 3 people, 8 people, 15 people." But what Larry remembers most is not how big he got, but that after each shed, Medusa would lift his head and stare at him for a few seconds, as if confirming something. Confirming what? Larry didn't say. In 2010, Larry brought Medusa to Kansas City, to an entertainment venue called Limbo, specializing in horror experiences. Medusa was placed in a custom alcove, coiled up. When visitors passed by, he didn't move at all, only his eyes followed the crowd. As you walk past, he stares at you. After you pass, his eyeballs follow you. You think he's a specimen, but he's breathing. He eats once every 2 weeks. Rabbits, wild boar, deer. He can swallow an entire 18-kilogram deer whole, bones and all. After eating, he enters a food coma and sleeps for 3 straight days without moving. But one time, Medusa didn't sleep after eating. Larry went to check and found him coiled in the alcove, head raised, eyes fixed on the venue's entrance. He held that posture for 6 hours. 6 hours, folks. A full python. Not sleeping, staring at the door for 6 hours. Larry later wrote in his notes, "Medusa knows where he is. He knows this is a place where many people pass by." Oh, and one more detail. The staff gave Medusa a nickname, the moment he pulls himself, because when he feeds, he often bites himself. Not the prey, but his own body. Reticulated pythons locate prey using heat sensing, but Medusa is so large that his own coiled body is also a heat source. One bite and he misses. Think about it, a snake so big that even it can mistake itself for prey. What does that mean? Okay. By now you might think this is just a really big snake. A bit scary, but that's it. No. The truly hair-raising part is still to come. In 2012, Medusa was entered into the Guinness World Records. Media swarmed in. Millions came to see him, but the venue quietly added a rule: Medusa must be kept in a fed state. No delay in feeding time. Why? Because a reticulated python's lower jaw has a separated structure, the 2 bones are not locked, can spread apart to the sides, and the skin can stretch to 3 times its original size. An adult human crouched into a ball, it can swallow whole. So, the venue's message was clear. This snake must be fed at all times. If hungry, trouble. In 2017, the Indonesian government released a statistic: over the past 10 years, multiple incidents of reticulated pythons attacking humans occurred on Sulawesi and Sumatra. Those pythons were up to 7 meters long. Medusa was already over 7.6 meters and still growing. In one case, a 6-meter reticulated python swallowed an adult woman whole. When villagers found her, the snake's belly bulged in the shape of a human body. After cutting it open, the body was still intact. A 6-meter snake could do that. Medusa was almost 2 meters longer. That same year, Larry posted an update on his blog. He wrote, "Today I helped Medusa shed his skin. He lifted his head and stared at me for over 10 seconds. Then he let me continue." This was the first time Medusa had stopped to look at Larry before letting him touch him. It wasn't like this before. In the past, as soon as Larry got close, Medusa would let him work. Now he looks at you first, and only after looking, decides whether to let you touch him. In 2019, Medusa was 15 years old. They weighed him once. He was 180 kilograms. Compared to 2011. That was 20 kilograms heavier. But nobody measured his length. Guinness rules state that length is only remeasured when someone challenges the record. And there wasn't a single captive python in the world qualified to challenge him. So nobody knows how long he really is now. In 2024, a wild reticulated python was found in Indonesia, measuring 7.22 meters. It was certified as the world's longest wild snake. The media mentioned in passing that it was 45 centimeters shorter than Medusa, but they were comparing with data from 2011. That measurement was taken 15 years ago. Reticulated pythons live up to 20 years in the wild, and 30 to 50 years in captivity. Medusa is now 22, according to experts. He's just entering his prime. Prime, folks. A snake that 15 years ago required 30 people just to carry, and they're telling you he's only in his prime. But what comes next is the quietest and most unsettling part of this entire story. A few years ago, Larry posted a photo on his blog. Medusa was coiled in a recess, eyes looking up at the camera. Below the photo, Larry wrote, "Today I helped him shed. He looked at me for 8 seconds, then let me continue." Someone in the comments asked why he specifically mentioned that. Larry replied, "In 2010 it was 30 seconds. In 2015 it was 20 seconds. In 2019 it was over 10 seconds. He keeps shortening the judgment time. Do you understand? Every time Medusa sheds, he lifts his head and looks at Larry. Not just a casual look, it's a judgment. A judgment of whether the person approaching him is safe. And the time it takes him to make that judgment has dropped from 30 seconds to 8 seconds over 15 years. He's learning Larry. In 2025, the facility wanted to give Larry a raise, on the condition that he train an assistant to take over. Larry refused. In his reply email, he wrote only one line. "Medusa's new judgment time is just 3 seconds. It took me 20 years to teach him this. I'm not sure how long it would take the next person to earn the same judgment from him, and I'm not sure what would happen before that." A week after that email went out, the facility cancelled the photo project. Larry is 58 now. By policy, he must retire at 65. That's 7 years away. In 2026, Medusa still lives in Kansas City. Hundreds of thousands of people visit him every year. He still eats every 2 weeks. Still remains completely still during working hours, only his eyes tracking the crowd. Still makes a contented purring sound. When Larry approaches, Larry is still his only keeper. 22 years, never replaced. But what Larry hasn't told anyone is that the last time he helped Medusa shed, he didn't lift his head to look at him. He just let Larry continue. He no longer needs to judge. Like during that 2011 measurement. He didn't move once in 2 hours. Not because he was cooperating, because he didn't need to. That sounds like a good thing, right? 20 years of trust. But look at it another way. A snake spent 20 years learning to trust one person. Over those 20 years, what he was doing wasn't a conditioned reflex. Not taming, not obedience. He was observing, judging, shortening his reaction time, bit by bit. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, over 10 seconds. 30 seconds, 3 seconds. This isn't trust. This is a calculation process. It's finished running. And 7 years later, Larry retired. The new keeper walked into a specialized enclosure. Medusa would raise his head and watch this stranger. From that moment, the count resets to 0. 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Or it doesn't give you any time at all. No one knows. Because no one knows what Medusa's criteria for judgment are. No one knows that either. If his judgment is unsafe, what would he do? Larry knows, but Larry isn't saying. When your cat rubs against your leg, do you ever feel something is off? 3 million years ago. Its relative specialized in cracking open your ancestors' skulls like opening a can. Scientists unearthed an ancient ape skull. On it, 2 holes with millimeter precision in spacing, exactly matching your eye sockets. This is no coincidence. This is a custom-built execution machine tailored for you. It's called Dinofelis. For a full 1,000,000 years, it did only one thing: hunt humans. And now you're afraid of the dark. Afraid of sharp sounds. It's not that you're cowardly, it's that in your DNA. That ancestor who was partly eaten is screaming for you. You might want to ask, what did Dinofelis actually look like? Many people think it was just a downgraded saber-toothed tiger. Wrong. Dead wrong. Completely wrong. Those 2 fangs of the saber-toothed tiger, half a meter long, look scary, right? But that thing is like a Swiss Army knife. Looks good but useless, thin and brittle. Bite into bone, snap, it breaks. Those teeth were designed for mammoths. To pierce thick hide and bleed them out. But what Dinofelis had in its mouth was completely different. In 1924, Austrian paleontologist Otto Zdansky first named this species. He stared at the fossil for a long time and discovered that Dinofelis's canine teeth were short, thick, wide, and in cross-section. Like flat chisels. If the saber-toothed tiger's teeth were Japanese samurai swords, long and thin, then Dinofelis's teeth were steel skewers, short. But every millimeter delivers force. They weren't for cutting, they were for punching through. But that's not the most hair-raising part. In 2001, Swedish paleontologists Lars Werdelin and Margaret Lewis published a comprehensive review of Dinofelis. They measured many Dinofelis skull fossils and discovered a terrifyingly thought-provoking pattern. The distance between the two upper canines of Dinofelis matched the width and height between the eye sockets of Australopithecus. What does that mean? Imagine this. You're holding a screwdriver custom-made for a specific screw size. Those two teeth of Dinofelis were nature's millions of years honed demolition tool specifically fitted for primate skulls. Two steel skewers simultaneously pierce both sides of your temples, instantly penetrating the skull, destroying the central nervous system on the spot. You don't even have time to feel pain. You're already dead. Then you might ask again, how big was Dinofelis? It weighed about 150 kilograms. What does that mean? Go to a gym and find the strongest man. About 90 kilograms. Dinofelis is equivalent to 1.5 of those gym muscle men, pressing down on you. But its muscle density is much higher than a human's. Shoulder height 1 meter, similar to an adult lioness, body covered in stripes. Limbs thick, short, and powerful, especially the forelimbs. Compared to modern felines, Dinofelis's forearm bones were exceptionally robust. They weren't for running, they were for killing. One slap down, and your collarbone shatters into 3 pieces. But the scariest thing isn't its strength. It's its hunting method. Dinofelis doesn't chase you, it waits for you. Same routine as your house cat: stalk, approach, ambush. Except your cat hunts a feather toy. And it hunts your ancestors' heads. Paleontologist from the Transvaal Museum in South Africa, Bob Brain, starting in 1965, at Swartkrans Cave, dug for nearly 20 years. He unearthed hundreds of hominid fossils in the cave. Among them was a juvenile Paranthropus skull, catalog number SK54, on the back of the head. There were 2 perfectly aligned puncture holes. Brain took a large feline mandible and aligned the canines with the 2 holes. They fit perfectly, like a key into a lock. This discovery completely rewrote a theory that had circulated for decades. Before Brain, the academic community generally believed in Raymond Dart's view. Our ancestors, Australopithecus, were fierce hunters, active predators who struck first. They used bones and feet as weapons, killing each other and even eating their own kind. That theory sounds empowering, doesn't it? But Brain, staring at a cave full of shattered bones, reached a completely opposite conclusion. In 1981, he wrote a book titled, Hunter or Hunted? The answer was, prey. Our ancestors weren't born warriors. They were food, meat dragged into caves, and devoured by large felines. The cracked skulls didn't bear the marks of cannibalism. They were the dinner bills of Dinofelis. Now close your eyes and imagine a scene. 2.5 million years ago, southern Africa, just after sunset. The temperature plummets from 95 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. You are an Australopithecus. You're under 4 feet 3 inches tall, weighing less than 88 pounds, about the size of a modern 5th grader. You have no claws, no fangs. Your night vision is essentially zero. You crouch on a branch of a fig tree, hugging the trunk, listening to your own heartbeat. All around you, insects chirp. Suddenly, they go silent. An unnatural stillness. You feel the trunk vibrating faintly, something is climbing. You look down but see nothing. Then you catch a whiff of something musky. Then you hear breathing, half a meter above your head. The next second, 2 steel-like fangs sink into your temples. Your brain hasn't even had time to register pain. Before everything ends, the entire ordeal takes less than 3 seconds. This isn't a movie. This is what your ancestors faced every single night. And the most surreal part? This nightmare isn't fully over even today. Evolutionary psychologists have identified a system called prepared fear, fear of the dark, fear of heights, fear of sudden movements, fear of sharp sounds. These fears aren't learned, they're innate. A baby who has never seen a snake will have dilated pupils and increased heart rate at the first sight of a snake picture. Similarly, when you hear fingernails scraping a chalkboard, that high-pitched screech, your skin crawls. That frequency almost exactly matches the sound of a large cat sharpening its claws or tearing through bone. Your body remembers for you what happened 3 million years ago. The ancestors who heard that sound and didn't run or panic, they were all eaten. The ones who survived and reproduced were the jittery, easily startled ones. You are the descendant of those cowards, and it's precisely because of that fear that you're alive. But here's a true paradigm shift that might overturn everything you've just imagined. Was Dinofelis really a dedicated human hunter? In 2001, after Werdeland's review, another group of scientists performed carbon isotope analysis on Dinofelis fossils, unearthed from Swartkrans cave. Carbon isotopes can tell you what an animal primarily ate during its life. The results came in. Number 1 on the Dinofelis menu wasn't primates, it was large herbivores, antelope, rhino, wild cattle, a variety of ungulates. Primates made up only a tiny fraction of its diet. In other words, Dinofelis wasn't custom-built to hunt humans. It was an opportunist. Most of the time, it ate antelope. But when it passed by your campsite, it might casually crack open a skull for a midnight snack. Sounds relieving, doesn't it? But don't celebrate too soon. Because this truth is more terrifying than if it had specialized in eating humans. It means Dinofelis didn't even need us as a staple food. A single casual swipe from time to time was enough to engrave a fear into our genes that a million years couldn't erase. You weren't driven to the edge by a focused hunter. You were casually swatted aside by something that barely even noticed you. That kind of fear runs deeper, because you can never predict when it will come. It didn't come every day, but it might. Any night that comes, you have to live in that uncertainty every single day. That's what truly drives a person insane, and it's that very insanity that drives everything. To survive in uncertainty, your brain was forced to learn one thing: calculation. Constantly scanning your surroundings, constantly judging what's safe and what's dangerous. Constantly simulating escape routes in your mind. Your ancestors were forced into becoming the most anxious animals on the planet. And the byproduct of anxiety is intelligence. Neuroscience research shows a strong correlation between the explosive growth of primate brain size and predator pressure. In short, the more terrifying the thing trying to eat you, the faster your brain was forced to evolve. The terror cat wasn't our enemy, it was our teacher. A teacher whose lesson plan was death. Then came the turning point. Around 2.5 million years ago, Earth's climate swung wildly. Africa grew drier and drier. The once endless rainforests began to vanish patch by patch, replaced by savanna. For the terror cat, this was a catastrophe. Its entire hunting system, ambush, tree climbing, night raids, depended on dense vegetation for cover. On the savanna there were no big trees, no thickets. The view was as open as a football field. Its cloak of invisibility was gone. But for our ancestors, being forced down from the trees and onto the ground opened a new door instead. Without the trees for shelter, they started to band together. One Australopithecine was easy prey. 10 Australopithecines holding rocks, that was trouble. Archaeological evidence shows that in this period, next to human fossils, we start to find large numbers of smashed animal bones and crude stone tools. We started eating meat. High-calorie protein fed our brains. Brain size jumped from just over 400 milliliters to nearly 1,000 milliliters. To put that in perspective, a can of soda is 330 milliliters. Our brains went from a little bigger than one can of soda to the size of 3 cans. That extra 2 cans worth of capacity was filled entirely with computational power. Language skills, cooperation skills, the capital for fighting back. But what Brian found in Swartkrans cave was the real nuclear bomb. In 1988, he and his collaborator Andrew Sillen discovered 270 fragments of charred bone in the third sediment layer of the cave. Chemical analysis showed these bones had been heated to temperatures consistent with a campfire, and that layer dates back roughly 1 to 1.5 million years. This is one of the earliest pieces of evidence for controlled fire use in human history. Think about what that means. In the same cave, the lower layers yielded bones and skulls gnawed by Dinofelis. The upper layers yielded burnt bones from ancient humans. The story had done a complete 180-degree reversal in just a few meters of rock. Below, prey. Above, hunter. Below, fear. Above, fire. Do you know what fire meant to the Dinofelis? The Dinofelis was a nocturnal animal. Its entire hunting logic was built on darkness. And fire is the mortal enemy of darkness. The night the first flame lit up at the cave's mouth, the dire cat's hunting grounds began to collapse. Its night vision advantage dropped to zero. Its ambush tactics, the very foundation of its survival, failed. And that trembling herd of prey now sat around the fire, their eyes reflecting the flames. They were no longer afraid of the dark. Fossil records show that around 1.2 million years ago, Dinofelis vanished entirely from the fossil record. The apex predator that once ruled Africa's dark night simply faded away without a sound. No grand, climactic battle. No epic final blow. It just, night after night lit by fire. Slowly found less and less food, slowly starved. Now look down at your cat, sprawled on the couch, snoring. Waiting for you to scoop its litter box. Scratch its head, and it rolls over. To show you its belly. 3 million years ago, its ancient relative used the same shaped canine teeth to pierce through your ancestor's skull. And now, the most aggressive thing this species does is knock your water glass off the table at 4 in the morning. You think that's a joke, but it's the most outrageous power reversal in the entire history of life on Earth. That god of the dark that made your genes scream for 1,000,000 years, its descendant is lying in your lap, begging for affection. And that split-second wave of unexplained unease you feel after you turn off the lights tonight, that's the last inheritance it left you. Your body still remembers, it's just that your brain has chosen to forget.